Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Impact Farming Show. I have a special guest with me, Shawn Brook. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
I am so happy to have you here. Shawn is one of the leaders in agriculture that has really stepped up and really got a voice behind mental health in agriculture. So we are here today and we are going to be diving into all things mental health. So welcome and welcome.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Glad to be here.
I've been waiting for this. I am going to get you to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and maybe touch on your connection to the agriculture industry. And I know you're involved in Do More Ag.
Yeah, so I'm the president of Issues Inc. We've been involved in agriculture for over 25 years now. And our role as a media company and consultancy in agriculture puts me in touch with a lot of different people. Yeah. Lots of farmers, lots of industry folks. And mental health was never a topic of conversation.
No, it wasn't. Nope.
And we never talked about it. We never thought about it. And maybe the biggest thing we said was, I'm good, I'm fine. That's how we talked about our mental health.
Yeah.
And that all changed for me back in 2005 was when my wife was diagnosed with bipolar.
Okay.
And so back in 2005 she was diagnosed with bipolar. She fought a long and hard fight with bipolar and died by suicide 4 years ago. Actually, you don't even know this, but 4 years ago, Saturday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so that was of course, a gut-wrenching experience for us to go through. And I think one of the things that I learned in that experience was, by experience I mean through that number of years, I didn't know anything about mental health.
As most of us don't.
Yeah, didn't know how the pieces fit together, didn't know what it meant, didn't know how any of the thinking that goes behind it. And so that got me, having to go through that exercise got me learning a lot more, understanding a lot more. And I started out as well, it's going to sound terrible, I started as a typical guy. Right?
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Where I just thought that, you know what, if you're not getting done the things you're supposed to get done, that means you're lazy. If you don't want to talk about the things that are important to you, that means you're closed-minded. If you're not where you're supposed to be when you were supposed to be there, then that means you're just a slacker.
Yeah.
And these are things that I got taught for sure on the farm. And they served me very well to be successful.
Yes.
In my life. And they really got in my way for being there for people that really matter to me, in this case my wife, because that got in the way of me being a support for her.
Okay. Dramatically
in the way for being a support for her. And I don't want people to be in that spot. So I want people to understand that there's so much more that you don't know about mental health issues, that if and when you do know about them, it can completely change your perspective. And it can change your ability to be a support person for someone in your life.
Excellent. So again, thank you so much for being here. I know this is personal, near and dear to your heart and your family, and our show and our audience will benefit from your experience. As we all know, 2019 has been, how do you even put this year into books, into words? It's been a year for the books, right? I mean, between drought and flooding and trade issues and pricing, it always seems like there's something in agriculture, but this year it seems there's a little extra. So I've actually, on the Impact Farming Show, taken the full month of November and we're dedicating it to mental health. So thank you for being here. I know our interview is going to ebb and flow a little bit. We'll go to some of the work you're doing and chime a little bit more about your personal story. So we know why you're out there and you have that passion behind your message. You got involved with Do More Ag. and you shared a story with me, and it really kind of knocked the wind out of me. You were at an event, you were speaking, and when you were telling me this story, you were talking about the importance of sharing. So can you share that event with our audience, start to end?
Yeah, I will. If you think it knocked you in the gut, it really knocked me in the gut. And so I will tell you that we were at Farm Tech.
Okay.
And I had Leslie and Kim from Do More Ag, and we were doing a panel discussion about mental health. And so this is going back 3 years now, and we didn't know how many people were going to be in the room. We're farmers at an event, and we're putting on a mental health discussion.
And that would have been right at the beginning of Do More Ag too, when this was becoming okay to talk about, right?
To even start the conversation.
Yeah, okay.
And so we had no idea.
Okay.
We joked whether we were going to have 10 people or 50 people.
Who would know?
And we ended up with about a packed room of, I would say, close to 400 people. We had media outlets were there, the local news was there, and everybody was engaged in the conversation. And when we started off the process, I wanted to get everyone in the crowd to understand that we're kind of all in this together. So we had a series of questions we asked, and the first question was, who here has been impacted or has been impacted by suicide? And I thought we'd get a few people to stand up, and then we had some other follow-up questions to get everyone standing so we'd feel that togetherness. Well, the majority of it chokes me up to even talk about it now, but the majority of that entire room stood up, that their lives have been impacted by suicide. And I didn't see that coming, and I was standing up there with a microphone, gutted that suicide had impacted that many people in this room. And so that was the kind of the kickoff to this conversation, and it just put a big spotlight on it, and it kept it rolling. And like Leslie and Kim are just amazing individuals, and their ability and their generosity and sharing is just, it's inspiring, quite frankly. And so we had our session, and we answered all the questions at the end of the dialogue, and everybody's got a story to tell and a conversation to have. Finally we were done, and I had promised the ladies we were going to go find a glass of wine to share because we figured we deserved that.
Yeah, at the end of that day, yes.
And so I walk out of the room, and a gentleman is about, I don't know, he's maybe 50 yards away from me, and he sees me, and he just makes a beeline for me, eyeball to eyeball.
Oh boy.
And in the dictionary under like crotchety old farmer, there's a picture of this guy. And I thought, oh boy, he's going to give me hell for being a patty cake or something that's spinning in my head.
Right.
So I'm ready for this, bracing for the conversation. He comes up, and his face lightens as soon as he gets to me, and he says, "You saved my life today." Yeah, you saved my life today, and I'm not a guy who gets caught without words very often, and all I could kind of stumble out with was, what do you mean? And he said,
Yeah.
And he told me that he had decided that he was going to be taking his life. And when he heard these stories, and he heard the options of that he's not the only one that has some of these pieces going on, and that he heard some of the resources that were available to him, he's decided he's not doing that.
Wow.
And wow. Like, that's the biggest wow. And from that moment on, I realized that standing up and telling your story, standing up and engaging with people to remind them that they're not in this alone, that they don't have to figure this out on their own, and that if we could just tweak our attitudes just a smidge, that we might actually be able to help some folks.
Wow. Whew. Deep breath after that one.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have saw that coming? I always go that big
guy.
burly farmer, that old crotchety farmer, like you said. Who would expect that, right?
Right. No, you don't judge a book by its cover.
Ain't that true?
Yeah.
So, that's a perfect lead-in to my next question. Why is it so important that we're having this conversation?
You know, I might get in trouble for my answer because it's I will call it reverse sexist. Because what I have learned is the women in my life, they talk to me about how they come together with their friends, and they talk about things that are good, talk about things that are not good, but they talk about all these pieces. Those of us with a Y chromosome don't do it.
Really?
I know.
Really?
That is surprised to hear.
Yeah.
And so we don't do it, and we don't do it anywhere near enough. And then layer on top of that we've been told that if we get upset, if we show our feelings, if we show our emotions, we're wimps.
Yeah.
And cowboy up and get on with it, and like all these sentiments that we have tagged males with gets in our way of being able to have conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think that if men can understand that sharing about good things and sharing about the things that aren't so good leads to better understanding, leads to empathy, leads to solutions, then I think that can go a long way to helping in some of these scenarios.
Okay, now I'm gonna take the female role here that I know so well and just go back and forth a little bit. And yeah, women, we talk about this stuff. We talk about what's bothering us, our stresses, and I mean, there's obviously different personalities. There's the more outgoing and the introverted person that doesn't like to share in women and men, and that makes a difference. But women, we share. And I know when I ask you the importance, I kind of go, I know the importance.
Mm-hmm.
When I can sit and talk with, well, my husband, but usually a group of women, mother, friends, when you have something that's just weighing on you, you're stressed, and you don't want to talk about it because maybe it's embarrassing, it's admitting weakness, whatever that case is, the lack of vulnerability. But when you do open up, first you go, right?
Mm.
It is literally like there is a ton of bricks lifted off your shoulder, and it doesn't even have to be anything big, something that's just weighing on you. And women, we get that. Mm-hmm. And I've done that, and we do it all the time. And you leave there lighter, happier, healthier, and that's not traditionally something that men do, right?
No, unfortunately it's not. And if somebody would have told me even 3 or 4 years ago that I'd be on camera talking about how you have to share what's going on in your head, I would have told them they were nuts. But one thing that my wife taught me was that is a critical piece to the puzzle. Yeah. And it's a critical piece to being able to take away some of the power of the things that we feel are completely overbearing and overwhelming. The minute they come out of our mouth, they're less overwhelming and they're less overbearing and they have less power over us.
Absolutely. I know just from my journey as an entrepreneur and a business owner, I'll take a little left turn here, but same concept is when you're doing something big and new and building a business, just like farming, it's scary. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stuff coming at you. And when I first started out in my journey, you feel fear, right? Mm-hmm. Because of financial, whatever it is, there's a lot on the line. And you feel that fear. And I personally used to go, what is wrong with me? I'm a strong person. Why am I feeling fear? And the neatest thing, where I love the power of a show and a podcast, I started listening to podcasts for entrepreneurs. And I heard somebody just one time go, entrepreneurial fear. I said, I'm not the only one. I'm not broken. And there's just that, when we talk about it, when we hear others that we look up to, that we look at and go, oh, they're amazing. They got it all together, and they share that we're all human. We all feel and think the same things. That just, you just go, I'm not alone.
Exactly.
And it takes that power away, right?
I think it takes away the power, and it's interesting because I think I was taught with maybe some journalism type of thinking to it that if you ask questions, then you get answers. But I think what I've realized about mental health issues is that asking someone if they're okay doesn't really give them much authority or power to share what's really going on. Telling them what's going on for you, telling them how you're truly feeling, telling them if you're actually going through something that's hard, that is what opens up that lock for them to be able to feel confident enough to tell you. Mm-hmm. And that's not a simple process to walk through, because it's this idea that to allow someone to be vulnerable, you have to be vulnerable with them first. And that's why I think that this storytelling piece is so important. So if you're a person who you have a story that you feel confident or capable enough to share, that then unlocks that ability for someone else to be able to share their story. And I'm not sure there's anything you could do more powerful for someone than give them permission to be in the light, to be in that spotlight, to be able to share their story. And that's what that vulnerability and sharing can do.
That's amazing. And the work that you're doing is amazing. So thank you. You're out there, you've worked with Do More Ag, you're being a voice for mental health in agriculture. It's just phenomenal what you're doing. And I really wanted to dive into how important it is. And maybe this is where I'll go. And as the show host, I throw myself under the bus once in a while because I think maybe that vulnerable thing, right? Mm-hmm. That thing, right? That vulnerable thing. There it is. So I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about mental health, anxiety, depression, a lot of misunderstandings. And I know you and I have chatted about this. And one that I want to share, because it has been so important on my journey, is how I hate to call myself ignorant, but there's always areas where we don't know. Mm-hmm. We're ignorant of the facts. And as a business person and a D personality, I'm a driver. I'm a doer. I'm a push myself to be the best person. I am very thankful. That is my DNA. But when I operate in the world and when I related to others, it was from my brain. It was from that understanding, like you said earlier when we opened up the interview, that if something's wrong, you know what, suck it up. Right? Try a little harder. Face that fear. And that's exactly how I thought about anxiety and depression. Well, you know what? Just put on a self-help tape and it's all going to be better. Because you know what? You'll get positive and you'll go. And I'm throwing myself under the bus, a little bit embarrassing, but you know what? I don't think I am out of the ordinary in that fact. Right?
No, I think that's where everyone is, because until you're in it, you can't truly appreciate it, or until someone around you. And I think maybe this was the transition point for me, was my wife was the most productive, the most engaging, the most powerful communicator I have ever met in my life.
Wow.
And I work with them all day, every day. And she was by a landslide the most. And so she went from that to not being able to function almost at all.
Wow.
And so to see that transition, this was not a woman who said, I'm not getting out of bed today because I'm feeling tired or lazy. Couldn't get out of bed. And so for me to see that woman that I knew, I loved, I trusted, and that was my whole life, transition from that to that changed my thinking. It forced me to change my thinking from put on the smiley face and get on with all those things you just said, to something completely changed here. This is a completely different situation, and it needs completely different thinking. And so it wasn't until she passed away that I went and did a mental health first aid course. And mental health first aid, in my mind, is a critical piece to people getting some of that understanding. For us to be truly empathetic with people, we have to understand, at least on some level, what they're going through. And mental health first aid, in my mind, stands along with St. John's ambulance courses, where we learn CPR and all the basic medical components. Mental health first aid courses that are put on in every province in Canada gives us the tools to be able to understand and have some empathy for folks that have some mental health issues. And let's be honest, this is a spectrum, so everyone has to understand their mental health, and then some people have some more significant issues that need some additional support. Mental health first aid can be one of those tools that can give that to you. And I know that Do More Ag has been putting, I think it's in your community, you said, Tracy.
Yeah. We applied, I applied to host in Steinbach, Manitoba, and I think it'll be coming up in 2020. Dates haven't been confirmed, but exactly that. You know, I went, sorry to hop in there, Shawn, but I went from that person that had no awareness, and then I ended up having individuals come into my life in various roles. And then all of a sudden I realized there was a problem. And then I dealt with those critical thoughts that I had, thinking, well, you know, why don't they suck it up, get it together, all of that stuff. Then doing a little Googling and learning and listening and going, okay, this is a little bit beyond a self-help tape and a pop a happy pill or a coffee and get going. So my journey's gone from that ignorance to, oh my goodness, we need to get the message out. And I really want to do the mental health first aid course, because as aware as I am now from learning and having some empathy, I still have a long way to go. Like you said, if somebody was having a panic attack in my office, anywhere I went, I wouldn't be sure what to do, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that most people aren't. We don't know what's going on. We don't understand those pieces. And I don't think that mental health first aid replaces professionals in any stretch of imagination.
No.
But it gives us some more confidence to be able to find ourselves in those situations. And the Do More Egg Foundation, my role with them is just a complete behind the scenes, anything I can do to support, but mostly to get the message out of the great work that they're doing. That's what I see my role as. So I travel across Canada and internationally now to be able to talk about mental health issues. I'm not a professional, I'm not an expert, but what I hope to be able to do is stir those conversations.
Yes.
Stir the conversations so that we can have more of them and have more real ones. We joked before this interview about, are we going to do this safe? Don't talk about any of the pieces.
Yeah.
That I think that if we're not willing to let our guards down a little bit to have some of these conversations, they don't end up accomplishing what we want them to. So that's what people have to get the confidence to be able to do that, and some of that training gives people that confidence.
It is. It's not easy, and I know you have a tough story to share, but even myself, I'm embarrassed by my lack of knowledge before and how lacking in sensitivity I was. And it wasn't my fault. I didn't know any better, but I often still hear people, and that's really why I'm throwing myself under the bus, because I've heard it. I know people that suffer from severe anxiety, and I've heard people go, she just needs to suck it up. She needs to stop drinking because that can cause anxiety, and just those thoughts. So I think until we start having these conversations, sharing honestly the hard stuff, for me, that embarrassing stuff that I don't handle all situations perfectly, I think until we can have these real conversations, it doesn't change, right? It
doesn't change. And I think that I listened to a podcast recently, and they talked about this idea that when babies are not acting the way that we want them to, they're upset. Our immediate thoughts are, do they need something to eat? Do they need their bum changed? Do they need to be cuddled? Do they need to sleep? And yet, when we see an adult human being not acting the way that we anticipate they are, we think, what a slacker, what a jerk, what a fill in the blank. And that his point was, what if we just changed our attitude? Not even that we figured we had to somehow save the person, but what if we just changed our attitude to, I wonder what's going on for them?
I love that.
Wonder what's going on for them. I don't want to figure out if they need their bum changed, but what is going on for them? And if we could just take that as our first step forward, our interaction with them would completely change.
I had a similar learning experience like that, and it changed the way I seen and operated with people. Let's say you get into the cab and the person's cranky, or that person doesn't treat you right. I used to get offended. I took it personal, right? Or when somebody you hire reacts poorly and does poor things. I now look at it as, what is going on in that person's life to make them act like that? And then when you go, it's not about me.
Right.
And you can just have that empathy. Yeah, that changes that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you've spent much time reading or listening to Brene Brown, but
yes, I have.
Boy, would I recommend to any of your listeners to spend some time with Brene Brown, because, and again, if someone would have told me a number of years ago, I'd be recommending Brene Brown, Tracy.
Me too. I think we're similar. Yeah.
But her language and her thinking about this subject, I think, really lends a lot of support and understanding to how it can all fit together.
She absolutely does. So if we don't think this is a subject that needs to be talked about, I think we have a rude awakening. Honestly, sometimes the hard stuff in life, we like to brush it under the rug, right? But I want to share some stats. I know you know these stats, but I want to share them with our audience. And if we don't think we have a problem and this is a subject that needs to be talked about over and over, well, we have another thing coming. So the first 3 stats that I have here, and I referenced them, and I wanted to get them perfect here. They're from Do More Egg. So the first one is 35% of producers met the criteria for depression. 45% were classified as having high stress. 58% met the criteria for anxiety classification. 58%, that's 60% of our farming population. And I'm a farmer myself. I know a lot of farmers. I work with farmers. And you know, not one of this surprises me.
Right.
When you are dealing with big dollars on the line,
Yep.
financed, and Mother Nature is your best friend or your worst enemy, how can you not? How can you not? Now, the stat I wanted to go to, I don't think Do More Egg and the study here from University of Guelph, I think is where it came from. They didn't touch on suicide. So I went to the Canadian Mental Health Association, and it reports that there are 4,000 deaths per year in Canada. That's 10 a day. 10 Canadians a day
By suicide.
take their life by suicide. And the second stat to that one is suicide is the leading cause of death among people 15 to 24, right behind accidents. Suicide, right behind accidents. And I know there's another classification for the age bracket right after that, and it's right up there as well. So if we don't think this is something that needs to be talked about, well, I think that's changing. I think we all realize that it needs to be chatted about.
Yep.
So you have touched on your story. We know why you are so passionate about this subject. And I know this isn't easy for you, but do you want to share a little bit about your story and your wife and your family's journey?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of pieces in here that I'm not wildly proud of, and they're hard because nobody likes to make mistakes, and they really don't want to make mistakes when it's people that they love. And my wife was my life. She's the mother of my 4 children. She was my wife. She was my love since high school.
Oh, wow.
It was everything about her. She was my absolute everything. And I told you that she was wildly articulate, passionate about life, and could accomplish literally anything that was put in front of her. And to watch her slide away from that was a very painful thing to watch. And the guilt that I have around the ignorance that I displayed in not understanding, in not supporting, and not getting what some of these pieces meant and how to deal with them, I mean, I'll go to my grave regretting it. And I don't want anyone to regret that. I don't want anyone to find themselves in that spot where they regret that. And one of the steps they can take is with that mental health first aid course to get the first, at least some tools to be able to develop that empathy, to understand what somebody is going through in their lives. And I think the reality is now, you don't talk to anyone who doesn't have someone in their life that's having a mental health stress. And so that course, I regret so powerfully not having done that. And I've now had paid to have everyone at Issues Inc. take the course. All my family has taken the course, and they've all said the same thing, that it's life-changing because it gives you confidence to be able to have conversations. And I think what I've realized is that this conversation and this sharing stories, there's really two different people in the world. One, that are going to hear it and realize that they're not the only ones, and two, is people that can actually talk about it so that they can support the people in their lives. And sometimes we're both.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're both.
Yeah.
But both of those pieces are critical to continuing that conversation and being able to share the pieces that allow those two different groups to get what they need.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I know that's not easy at all. Not easy.
No, not easy.
But you know what? It's so important, and you know, giving yourself that grace and sharing your message with our audience, I think, is so important, right? Because we don't know. We don't know. And you coming on here and sharing this story will just give others the awareness, and we hope that empathy. The fact that I shared that as well, like I didn't know. And you know, the fact that I'm a little more aware and empathetic and have some tools, well, we can make a difference, right?
It's true. Absolutely, totally true. And don't be fooled. I don't care if you're not a great communicator. I don't care if you're shy. I don't care if you're fill in the blank of why you think you're not the one that can make an impact. You absolutely can. We joke at our company all the time that often the best communicators are those ones that aren't the big, gregarious, loud person.
It's true.
They're the ones that can actually make a connection. And
Right.
every human being can make a connection.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be loud, right?
No.
That quiet, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
I notice you're a little bit different. And I know the mental health first aid training gives a lot of tools for that. You know, I'm glad you said that. You shared another story with me, and I hope you're okay sharing it, about the power of knowing and the power just being able to recognize. You shared the story about that younger gentleman walking by.
Yeah.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it was one of those scenarios where somebody somewhere is pulling my strings in my life, because I walked out of mental health first aid training and I'm walking down Portage Avenue in Winnipeg,
Oh, wow.
and a guy walking towards me, a young man is walking towards me, very distressed and very distraught, and he's swearing and cussing and really loud, and he's talking to himself. And my normal instinct would have been to slide over to along the building and hope nothing bad happens and walk on past. And because of this training that I was just at, instead I said, "Excuse me, hey pal, you all right?" And he stopped. He said, "No, I'm not all right," and dropped all the expletives and I said,
Ooh, a little scary.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, "Tell me more." And he powered on with the story, and his girlfriend was this, and there was gangs, and there was this, and the whole story. And every time he'd start to peter out, I'd just say, "Tell me more." And he'd fire up again. And after 5 or 6 of these go-rounds, he said, "That's it. That's all I got." And so I said, "Okay." And in his story, he told me he was done. He was done. He was, there's nothing left for him to do. There's nothing more that can be helped. He's beyond saving, and so
Like he was suicidal.
he's going home to take care of it.
Oh, wow.
And so I told him that I need to ask a favor. I listened to your story. I wanted to stop and hear your story, and now you owe me an opportunity to help. And so I asked him if he would jump in my car with me, and I wanted to take him to someone that all I wanted him to do was to talk to them. And it was a crisis center here in Winnipeg that I'd learned about at this course.
Oh, wow.
And he agreed to it. To this day, I don't know how or why. And so he jumped in my car. I took him over there. I got him to the crisis center. And the truth is, Tracy, I don't know what happened from there, but I know he was saved right then
Yep,
for that period of time.
absolutely.
And whether he learned or got something that he needed, I honestly don't know. And my role is not to be the professional that somehow thinks they know how to take care of someone, because I don't. But I got given some tools on how to be able to help be that little bit of a bridge. And isn't that what we want to be in? The people in our lives we want to be their bridge to the next piece.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, that puts us in a pretty powerful spot.
Absolutely. You saved that guy's life. Wow.
Yeah, it's
How powerful those tools are.
the tricky part about it is that it plays all that guilt up of I didn't do it. So I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to be the piece that gets in the way. Don't let what didn't happen get in the way of what could happen.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. So I know you have been so courageous in sharing this, and geez, I need to take a breather. There's the guilt, and you have amazing strength to share this with our audience and with me here and share your story whenever you can. I know you hold regrets, and there's nothing I can say that can change that. But I want to ask you a question, and I know it's a little deep, and I know you're okay going here, but if you could go back, going back is sometimes, what would I do different? And I know you are okay sharing this, otherwise I wouldn't have asked. But if you could go back, what would you do different? And what I hope to get is to get an answer that can inspire our audience to take action.
Yeah, I think if I could go back, the piece that I missed was admitting that there was stuff I didn't know.
Okay.
Because, I mean, everyone that I know is smart enough to go learn things that they know they don't know. But what got in my way, and I think what continues to probably get in my way about different things, is not knowing or not realizing that there's pieces I don't know. If I could have admitted that I didn't understand what was going on, then I would have gone out and gotten professional help. I have no problem talking to a chef to teach me how to cook. I have no problem in talking to a professional driver to teach me how to drive better. But for some reason I wasn't able to see that there was something here that I didn't know. So if I could change that to just take one step back and realize maybe there's something here that I don't know, that would give me the space to then go get some support, go get some training, go actually spend some time going onto the internet, for example, and just finding out more information about what does mental health actually mean.
Yeah.
So as basic as that, and then what do mental health issues mean, what are mental health stressors. There's so many of these pieces that, again, I don't claim to be the expert. I don't claim to be the expert, and unfortunately I've gone through some painful pieces. But what I wish I would have done was had that training in advance. Had that training so that I would have had some of those tools to be the person that I should have been for the people in my life. And hopefully am working towards doing that now.
Well, you are. Sharing this is making a huge impact. Well, you've impacted many lives already, and our audience out there listening to this, I know they're going to be impacted. There's a lot of people in a tough place right now, and there's a lot of concerns about mental health. So thank you for sharing your story. I know sharing is hard, and when we spoke about this, you were adamant that you wanted to go into the hard spots, the ones that could easily not be talked about. So thank you for doing that.
No problem. I can tell you, Tracy, it's a lot easier to talk about the global seed industry, which is what I talk about normally, than it is to talk about this. But I think that this is where we can actually move the needle.
Should we change the subject and talk about the weather? Oh, I had to get a laugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. You know what? Thank you so much. I mean, this is tremendous, tremendous courage that you have sharing this and continuing to share. And I know the lives are going to be impacted out there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tracy. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you on next week's episode of the Impact Farming Show. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.